The towering skyscrapers of Earth's capital sparkled under the morning sun, their reflective glass surfaces almost as bright as the smile Dr. Nathan Carter wore. As a renowned geneticist, he had never imagined he'd be standing on the landing pad of a diplomatic spaceport, waiting for a Zentralli Royal to descend from her sleek, golden spacecraft. The Zentralli were an advanced alien race known for their unmatched technological prowess and their cool, logical demeanor. This was humanity's chance to make a lasting impression. Nathan adjusted his tie nervously. "Why me?" he muttered under his breath, clutching the tablet with his carefully prepared notes. Before he could spiral further into self-doubt, the ship's hatch hissed open, releasing a wave of cool, perfumed air. Out stepped Princess Lizera, her regal figure framed by the ship's glowing doorway. Her silver hair cascaded down her back, shimmering like moonlight, and her violet eyes surveyed the scene with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Nathan stepped forward, offering his hand in greeting. "Princess Lizera, welcome to Earth. I'm Dr. Nathan Carter, your guide during your stay." Lizera glanced at his outstretched hand, then back at his face, her expression unreadable. After a brief pause, she placed her delicate three-fingered hand in his. "Dr. Carter," she said, her voice smooth yet cold, "I trust your expertise will make this visit enlightening." Nathan swallowed hard. "I'll do my best." The next few hours were spent touring the spaceport and introducing Lizera to Earth's customs. Nathan explained the basics of human biology as they walked through exhibits, carefully avoiding topics that might seem too primitive. The princess listened politely but rarely spoke, her aloof demeanor making Nathan feel like a nervous schoolboy in front of a strict teacher. As they entered the Earth Cultural Exchange Center, Lizera paused before a holographic display of human life. The projection showed a woman holding a newborn, her face glowing with joy. Lizera tilted her head, studying the image. "Is this reproduction?" she asked, her tone laced with both curiosity and disbelief. Nathan hesitated. "Well, yes, that's a mother holding her baby." Lizera's eyes narrowed. "Your species reproduces naturally, through physical means." Nathan scratched the back of his neck, suddenly feeling very exposed. Yes. Humans reproduce biologically. It's a personal and emotional process." Lizera turned to face him fully, her gaze intense. "How inefficient, painful, messy. Why would any species choose such a method?" Nathan stammered, caught off guard. "It's not exactly a choice. It's just how we're made. But there's more to it than biology. It's about connection, love, and creating life together." Lizera's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smirk. "Connection, love, fascinating. On Zentralis, we synthesize offspring in advanced genetic chambers. Perfectly designed, no pain, no unpredictability. Logical and efficient." Nathan nodded slowly. "That does sound advanced. But don't you think there's something special about the way we do it? The bond between parents and children." Lizera raised an eyebrow. "Special? I suppose I'll have to see it for myself to understand." Before Nathan could respond, his tablet chimed with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen and sighed. "Looks like we're due for another meeting." As they walked to the conference room, Nathan found himself stealing glances at Lizera. Despite her aloofness, she seemed genuinely curious, her eyes darting around to take in every detail of her surroundings. There was something almost endearing about her attempts to understand a species so different from her own. The meeting was uneventful, filled with formalities and diplomatic pleasantries. But Nathan couldn't shake the princess's earlier question from his mind. Her perspective was so different from his own, so clinical. It made him wonder if she could ever truly understand what it meant to be human. As the day drew to a close, Nathan escorted Lizera to her quarters, a luxurious suite overlooking the city. She paused at the doorway, turning to him with a thoughtful expression. "Dr. Carter," she said, her voice softer than before. "Thank you for your explanations today, while your methods remain perplexing. I find them intriguing." Nathan smiled, relieved to see a crack in her icy exterior. "I'm glad to hear that, Princess. Tomorrow, I'll show you more about our culture. Maybe you'll find it less perplexing then." Lizera nodded, her gaze lingering on him for a moment before she stepped inside, and the door slid shut. As Nathan walked away, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Perhaps, despite their differences, there was a chance for understanding. And maybe, just maybe, this enigmatic princess would leave Earth with more than just facts. She'd leave with a piece of humanity in her heart. The city of New Avalon came alive as the morning sun bathed its streets in golden light. Dr. Nathan Carter stood at the base of Lizera's residence, nervously checking his tablet. Today's plan was ambitious. He wanted to show her the heart of humanity, family life, connections, and the intricate beauty of reproduction that she had dismissed so easily yesterday. The door slid open, and Princess Lizera stepped out, dressed in a sleek metallic gown that shimmered in the sunlight. Her silver hair flowed like liquid light, and her violet eyes locked onto Nathan with the precision of a laser. "You seem troubled, Dr. Carter," she said, folding her hands gracefully. "Am I late?" Nathan chuckled nervously. "No, not at all. I was just thinking about the schedule. I've planned something different for today." Lizera arched an elegant brow. "Different? I hope it's not another lecture." "Not exactly," Nathan replied, smiling. "Today, I'm taking you to see humanity in action. Real people, real lives. You'll understand our way of life better than any lecture could explain." Lizera's expression softened with curiosity. "Very well. Lead the way." They walked through the bustling streets, the sound of chatter, laughter, and music filling the air. Nathan guided Lizera toward a park where families gathered under the shade of towering trees. Children ran across the grass, their laughter echoing like music, while parents watched with warm smiles. Lizera paused, her gaze fixed on a couple sitting on a bench. The woman held a baby in her arms, gently rocking it to sleep, while the man leaned in, whispering softly. The scene seemed to mesmerize her. "Is this typical?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically quiet. Nathan nodded. "It is. That's what families are about, supporting each other, raising children together. It's not just biology. It's love, trust, and sacrifice." Lizera's lips pressed into a thin line. On Zintralis, children are raised in communal nurseries. Their genetic parents have no personal involvement. It's considered more efficient. Nathan glanced at her, noting the faint hint of sadness in her eyes. "Maybe it's efficient, but don't you think something's missing? The bond between a parent and child can shape who we are. It's irreplaceable." Before she could respond, a commotion nearby drew their attention. A young boy had tripped while running and was crying loudly. His mother rushed to him, scooping him up and holding him close. She whispered soothing words, wiping his tears, until the boy calmed down. Lizera watched the scene intently, her violet eyes narrowing. Fascinating. Such an immediate emotional reaction. Why risk such vulnerability? "Because it's worth it," Nathan replied simply. "Caring for someone, loving them, it makes us stronger, even if it hurts sometimes." Lizera tilted her head thoughtfully but said nothing. The day continued with visits to different parts of the city. Nathan showed her a maternity ward in a hospital, where expectant mothers prepared for their new lives. He explained the challenges and joys of childbirth, the immense bravery it required. Lizera listened intently, her usual skepticism softened by a growing curiosity. At one point, they visited an art gallery showcasing sculptures of mothers and children from various cultures. Lizera lingered before a statue of a mother holding her child, her expression unreadable. "You humans immortalize this bond in your art," she said, almost to herself. "It must mean a great deal to you." Nathan smiled. "It does. It's part of what makes us human." As the sun began to set, Nathan led Lizera to a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. The sky blazed with hues of orange and pink, casting a warm glow over the skyline. Lizera leaned against the railing, her silver hair catching the light, her demeanor unusually subdued. "Today has been enlightening," she admitted after a long pause. "I see now that your species views reproduction as more than a biological function. It's intertwined with your emotions, your values. I find it both perplexing and intriguing." Nathan chuckled softly. "That's a start. Maybe tomorrow it won't seem so perplexing." Lizera turned to him, her violet eyes searching his face. "Dr. Carter, do you believe that pain and vulnerability are necessary for strength?" Nathan thought for a moment before answering. "I do. The struggles we face shape us. They make us appreciate what we have and who we are. Without them, life would feel hollow." Lizera nodded slowly, her gaze drifting back to the horizon. "Perhaps there is more to your way of life than I first thought." Nathan couldn't help but smile. For the first time since they met, it felt like they were truly connecting. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the princess would leave Earth not just understanding humanity, but appreciating it. The next morning, Nathan stood outside Lizera's suite, waiting for her to join him. He glanced at his tablet, reviewing the day's plan. Today, he had arranged for something more immersive, an opportunity for the princess to witness human life up close. The door slid open, and Lizera appeared, her silver hair neatly braided, her violet eyes as calm and piercing as ever. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit, clearly designed for practicality rather than the usual Zintrelli flair. "Good morning, Dr. Carter," she said, her tone as measured as always. "What cultural revelations await me today?" Nathan smiled. "Good morning, Princess. I thought we'd visit a human family today. You'll get to see how we interact in our homes, how relationships shape our lives." Lizera's eyebrow arched slightly. A family. This should be illuminating. The two of them boarded an aircar, soaring over the vibrant cityscape toward a quiet suburban neighborhood. Nathan's colleague, Lisa, had invited them to her home, eager to contribute to the cultural exchange. Her family was warm, welcoming, and exactly what Nathan hoped Lizera would need to see. As the aircar landed in front of a modest house surrounded by a garden bursting with colorful flowers, Lizera observed the scene with keen interest. "Is this typical for a human dwelling?" she asked. Nathan nodded. "Pretty typical, yes. Let's head inside." The door opened before they could knock, and Lisa greeted them with a wide smile. "Nathan, and you must be Princess Lizera. Welcome to our home." Lizera inclined her head politely. "Thank you for hosting me. I am eager to observe." Lisa laughed warmly, stepping aside to let them in. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. My husband is in the kitchen, and the kids are playing in the backyard." The living room was cozy, filled with soft furniture, family photos, and the faint scent of freshly baked cookies. Lizera's gaze darted around, taking in every detail, from the worn carpet to the children's drawings pinned to the fridge. Lisa's two children, a boy of about 7 and a girl slightly older, soon rushed inside, giggling and arguing over a toy. They stopped abruptly when they noticed Lizera, their eyes widening. "Mom," the boy whispered loudly, "is she an alien?" Lisa chuckled, gently pushing them forward. "Kids, this is Princess Lizera. She's visiting from a faraway planet." Lizera bent down slightly, meeting their curious gazes. "Greetings, young humans," she said with a small smile. "It is a pleasure to meet you." The children giggled, their shyness fading. They began peppering her with questions. What was her planet like? Could she fly a spaceship? Did she have a pet? Lizera answered patiently, her reserved demeanor softening as she spoke to them. Nathan watched with amusement. It was the most relaxed he'd seen her since her arrival on Earth. Lizera seemed genuinely intrigued by the children's energy and innocence. Later, they all gathered around the dining table for lunch. Lisa's husband, Mark, served plates of steaming food while everyone chatted. Lizera listened intently as Lisa and Mark shared stories about their life, balancing work, raising children, and the joys and challenges of family life. At one point, Lizera turned to Lisa. "Do you not find it exhausting, investing so much time and energy into your offspring?" Lisa smiled, her eyes warm. "It can be exhausting, sure, but it's also incredibly rewarding. Seeing them grow, learning who they are, it's worth every moment." Mark nodded in agreement. "It's not just about raising kids. It's about building a life together, supporting each other through everything. Family is what keeps us grounded." Lizera's expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. On Zentralis, children are raised collectively. Individual parents do not bear the responsibility. It is considered more efficient. Lisa tilted her head thoughtfully. "That sounds very practical. But I can't imagine not having that bond with my kids. It's what makes life meaningful." The conversation continued, and Lizera grew increasingly engaged, asking more questions about human emotions, relationships, and traditions. She seemed genuinely fascinated, though she occasionally shook her head at the seeming inefficiency of it all. After lunch, the children begged Lizera to join them in the backyard for a game. To everyone's surprise, she agreed, though she maintained her composed demeanor. Watching her attempt to understand the rules of a simple tag game while being chased by laughing children was a sight Nathan never thought he'd see. As the day wound down, Lizera stood with Nathan on the porch, watching the sun set over the quiet neighborhood. "Today has been different," she admitted. "Your people's commitment to emotional bonds is far greater than I expected." Nathan smiled. "And what do you think about it now?" Lizera hesitated before replying. "I think there is much for me to consider. Perhaps efficiency is not the only measure of success." Nathan's grin widened. For the first time, he felt like Lizera was truly starting to understand. And that, he thought, was a step in the right direction. The air was crisp as Nathan and Lizera stepped out of the aircar the next morning. Today's destination was a small countryside clinic, a place Nathan hoped would give Lizera a deeper understanding of humanity's resilience and determination, particularly when it came to life and family. Lizera's violet eyes scanned the quaint surroundings, her silver hair catching the morning sunlight. The clinic stood at the edge of a grassy field, its simple structure contrasting sharply with the sleek technology of her spaceship. A faint hum of activity came from inside. Voices, laughter, and the occasional cry of a baby. "This is your next lesson?" Lizera asked, her tone neutral but tinged with curiosity. "A medical facility." Nathan nodded. "It's more than just a clinic. It's a place where life begins for many. Today, you'll see a part of human life that's both challenging and beautiful." As they entered, the warm scent of antiseptic and fresh flowers greeted them. Nurses bustled about, tending to patients with smiles that never seemed to fade despite the constant activity. A woman in her late 30s approached them, her kind eyes lighting up when she saw Nathan. "Nathan, it's been a while," she said, extending her hand. "And this must be the princess." "Good to see you, Clara," Nathan replied, shaking her hand. "Yes, this is Princess Lizera. She's here to learn more about human life." Clara nodded at Lizera, her smile unwavering. "Welcome, Princess. You've chosen an interesting day to visit. We have a few mothers in labor right now. If you're comfortable, you can observe." Lizera's expression didn't change, but her posture stiffened slightly. "Labor? You mean the natural process of childbirth?" Clara chuckled. "That's right. It's a bit messy, but it's also one of the most amazing things you'll ever witness." The princess hesitated, glancing at Nathan, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Very well," she said. "I will observe." Clara led them to a quiet observation room overlooking the delivery area. Through the glass, they could see a woman in labor, surrounded by nurses and her partner, who held her hand tightly. The woman's face was a mixture of pain and determination as she bred through the contractions. Lizera watched intently, her violet eyes narrowing. She is in obvious discomfort. Why does she not use advanced methods to remove the pain? We do have pain management, Nathan explained, but many mothers choose to experience childbirth naturally. It's a personal decision, often tied to the emotional bond they feel during the process. Lizera tilted her head. Emotional bond. In Centralist culture, such emotions would be seen as unnecessary distractions. Nathan smiled. For us, they're what make the experience meaningful. The struggle, the connection, it's all part of the journey. As the labor progressed, Lizera's usually stoic expression began to falter. She watched as the woman pushed through the pain, her partner offering words of encouragement, the nurses working seamlessly to ensure everything went smoothly. When the baby was finally born, its first cry filled the room, and the mother's face lit up with pure joy. Lizera leaned closer to the glass, her eyes wide. She endured all that pain, and now she smiles. Nathan nodded. That's the power of love and sacrifice. It's not about avoiding hardship, it's about embracing it for something greater. Clara joined them, her voice gentle. Would you like to meet her? She's agreed to speak with you. Lizera hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I would like to understand her perspective. They entered the room where the new mother rested, the baby cradled in her arms. She looked up with tired but radiant eyes, smiling at her visitors. Princess Lizera, she said, her voice soft but warm. It's an honor to meet you. Lizera inclined her head. The honor is mine. I witnessed your ordeal. It was extraordinary. The woman laughed lightly. It wasn't easy, that's for sure. But when I look at him, she glanced down at her baby, her smile growing. I'd go through it all again. Lizera's gaze softened as she studied the infant. You chose this path, knowing the pain it would bring. Yes, the mother replied. Because the joy outweighs the pain. This little one is worth everything. For a moment, Lizera said nothing, her thoughts unreadable. Then she turned to Nathan. Your species continues to surprise me. You endure suffering willingly, even when alternatives exist. It is admirable, if unconventional. Nathan grinned. We're full of surprises. As they left the clinic, Lizera remained unusually quiet, her gaze distant as if lost in thought. Nathan didn't press her, knowing she needed time to process what she had seen. When they reached the aircar, Lizera finally spoke. Dr. Carter, I think I am beginning to understand. Perhaps there is value in your way of life that I have overlooked. Nathan smiled, starting the engine. Then we're making progress. And as they soared back toward the city, Lizera couldn't help but wonder if humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology, but in their ability to find meaning in the most unlikely places. The morning sun bathed the city in soft golden light as Nathan and Lizera made their way through the bustling streets of New Avalon. It had been several days since Lizera had first stepped onto Earth, and Nathan could sense a change in her, an openness that hadn't been there at the start of their journey. While she still viewed many aspects of humanity's way of life with skepticism, it was clear that something had shifted in her understanding. Today, Nathan had planned something that might push her even further. It wasn't a museum, a hospital, or a family home, but something much more intimate, a moment that would reveal another layer of what it meant to be human. They arrived at an orphanage, a place that offered shelter and care for children who had lost their families. The small building stood on the edge of a park, surrounded by trees and flowers. The sight of children playing in the yard caught Lizera's attention as soon as they arrived. Why bring me here? Lizera asked, her tone cautious but curious. You've already shown me families. Nathan gave her a small smile. Not all families are the same. Some people find family where they least expect it. Today, I want you to see how humans make their own sense of family, even in the hardest situations. Lizera remained silent as they entered the orphanage, greeted by a warm, welcoming atmosphere. The walls were painted in bright colors, and soft laughter echoed through the halls as children played and helped one another. It was a place filled with both hope and heartache, but above all, it was a place of second chances. A woman in her mid-30s, dressed in casual clothes, approached them. "Nathan, good to see you," she said with a smile. "And this must be Princess Lizera." "Thank you for letting us visit," Nathan replied, shaking her hand. "This is Lizera, and I thought she might like to see how humans care for those who don't have families." Lizera nodded politely, her violet eyes scanning the room. The children, none older than 10, ran past them, laughing and playing. A group of them stopped to stare at the visitors, whispering among themselves. One girl, no older than 6, shyly approached Lizera. "Are you really an alien?" the girl asked, her voice filled with innocent curiosity. Lizera crouched down to the child's level, her silver hair falling like a curtain around her face. "Yes," she said softly, smiling. "I come from a planet far away." The girl's eyes widened in awe. "Wow, you're so pretty." Lizera chuckled, a sound that was rare but genuine. "Thank you, little one." Nathan smiled, watching the exchange. He could see that Lizera was starting to soften, a hint of warmth in her normally guarded demeanor. The woman from the orphanage led them into a small room where the children were gathered for their afternoon activities. "Why don't you take a seat?" the woman suggested. "We're about to have story time, and the kids love to have visitors." Lizera hesitated for a moment, but then sat down on one of the chairs. The children gathered around, sitting cross-legged on the floor. One of the older children began to read from a book, telling the story of a family who, despite hardships, never gave up on each other. As the story unfolded, Lizera's expression remained focused. Nathan watched her closely, noticing the way her eyes lingered on the children, how she observed their interactions. There was a quiet intensity to her, a sense of awe and confusion mixed together. When the story ended, the children burst into applause, and Lizera clapped along, though her expression was still thoughtful. "Do you believe what they said?" one of the children asked, looking up at her with wide eyes. "That love is what makes a family." Lizera glanced at Nathan before answering. "I am still learning what it means," she said slowly, "but I think there may be more to it than I thought." After story time, they took a walk through the park outside, the soft wind rustling through the trees. Lizera was quieter than usual, her gaze distant as she observed the children playing in the distance. Nathan could tell she was thinking deeply about everything she had seen over the past few days. "You humans are strange," she said finally, breaking the silence. "You fight so hard for things that seem so unpredictable." Nathan smiled. "It's what makes us who we are. We may not always have control over everything, but we fight for what we believe in. For love, for family, for connection." Lizera paused, then looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "On Zentralis, we never needed to fight for those things. They were simply expected." "Maybe that's the difference," Nathan replied. "We don't take it for granted. We work for it, and sometimes that makes it even more precious." Lizera stared at him for a long moment before speaking again. "Perhaps I was wrong. Maybe your way has its own kind of strength." Nathan smiled. "I think you're beginning to understand." As they made their way back to the aircar, Lizera's steps were lighter, her thoughts clearer. Nathan knew they still had a long way to go, but today had been another step toward bridging the gap between two vastly different worlds. The days passed quickly, and Nathan could feel the change in Lizera. Her once cold demeanor had softened, though there was still a lingering skepticism in her violet eyes. She was beginning to understand humanity, but there were still questions, still pieces of the puzzle she couldn't quite put together. Today was different. Today, Nathan had something special planned, something that would take Lizera even further into the heart of humanity's strength. A visit to a disaster relief center. The aircar hummed as it flew over the city, heading towards a part of New Avalon that had once been devastated by a storm. Though the area had since been rebuilt, the scars of the destruction still remained. serving as a reminder of how humans could face tragedy and rebuild their lives. Lizera glanced out the window, her eyes taking in the sight of the sprawling disaster zone-turned-recovery center. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and wariness. "It's a relief center," Nathan explained, "where people come together to rebuild after natural disasters. It's not just about physical repair. It's about healing, emotionally and socially as well." Lizera's gaze lingered on the scene below. "So humans face devastation like this often?" Nathan nodded. "Unfortunately, yes. But each time, people come together, help each other, and rebuild stronger than before." The aircar landed near a large building, where workers, volunteers, and families were busy sorting supplies, offering assistance, and working together. The building was bustling with activity, and despite the chaotic scene, there was a sense of calm purpose in the air. As they stepped inside, Lizera took in the sight of people working side by side. Some were sorting clothing, others were preparing meals, while a group of children played in a designated area. The smell of fresh food and the sound of laughter filled the air. "This is impressive," Lizera said, her tone almost surprised. "People helping each other, even when they have little themselves." Nathan smiled. "That's what humanity does best. When times are tough, we pull together. We may not have the technology or the resources of other species, but we have something else: the strength of our community and the will to keep going." They walked further into the building, where a group of volunteers was setting up a small medical station. One of the workers, a middle-aged man with a friendly smile, approached them. "Hey, Nathan. It's been a while," the man said, shaking his hand. "And this must be the princess. Welcome to the center." "Thank you," Lizera replied, her tone polite but reserved. "I'm here to observe." The man, whose name was Michael, explained the work they were doing. "We provide medical assistance, food, shelter, and emotional support to those who've lost everything. We believe that rebuilding starts with people helping people." Lizera watched as volunteers assisted a young family with their supplies, offering comforting words as they prepared to move into temporary housing. The father, visibly exhausted, nodded gratefully, thanking the volunteers for their support. "Why don't you come with me?" Michael offered. "I can show you a place where people are sharing their stories. That's often the first step in healing." Lizera followed him through a set of doors into a quiet room, where a small group of people sat in a circle. They were sharing their experiences, talking about the destruction they had faced, the losses they had endured, and how they were learning to move forward. The room fell silent as Lizera entered. The group looked up, some surprised to see an alien princess, but they quickly returned to their discussion. Michael introduced Lizera to the group, explaining that she was observing human behavior to understand the species better. "I know what it's like to lose everything," one woman said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But here, we're learning to rebuild together. It's the only way." Another person, a man with graying hair, added, "It's not easy. The pain doesn't go away, but we've learned that we're not alone. We have each other, and that makes all the difference." Lizera stood quietly, taking it all in. She had expected to see suffering, but she hadn't expected to see the strength that came from it. The way these people, despite the tragedies they had faced, were learning to support one another and build something new from the ashes. After a few moments, she turned to Nathan, her eyes thoughtful. "These humans, they seem to find strength in each other, even when there is so much pain." Nathan nodded, his voice soft. "Yes, it's one of humanity's greatest strengths. We may not have the same physical power as some other species, but when we work together, we're unstoppable." Lizera watched as the group shared a moment of silence, their hands resting on one another in solidarity. A quiet strength filled the room, and she found herself moved by it. These were people who had lost everything, but they hadn't given up. Instead, they had chosen to rebuild, to love, and to support each other. "You were right," Lizera said quietly. "There is something remarkable about humanity. Perhaps it is not just your biology that makes you strong, but your ability to heal and come together in the face of hardship. Nathan smiled, his eyes warm. I'm glad you're starting to see that. As they left the relief center, Lizara's steps were slower, more deliberate. She was quiet, lost in thought, but Nathan could see that she was no longer the same person who had first arrived on Earth. The princess who had once viewed humanity with skepticism was beginning to see something deeper, something she hadn't understood before. Perhaps, Nathan thought, the biggest lesson of all wasn't just about biology, or technology, or even the strength of a species. It was about the power of connection, the ability to heal, to grow, and to find strength in the face of adversity. The sun was beginning to set as Nathan and Lizara sat on a quiet park bench overlooking the city. It had been a long day, filled with observations and revelations, but as the light faded and the stars began to appear, it felt like everything they had experienced was starting to come together. Nathan glanced at Lizara, noticing the thoughtful look in her eyes. "So, what do you think?" he asked, his voice calm but curious. Lizara was quiet for a moment, her eyes still fixed on the horizon. "I came to Earth expecting to find a species ruled by emotions, primitive, unorganized," she said slowly. "But I've learned that there is something more to you, something deeper." Nathan smiled softly. "You're starting to see it, aren't you? Humanity's strength isn't just in what we can do, it's in what we can endure. In the connections we form, in the love we give and receive." Lizara nodded. "Yes, I see that now. Your species isn't just about survival. You find meaning in the struggles, in the pain. And you share that meaning with each other." Nathan watched as she spoke, impressed by the shift in her perspective. The princess who had once seen human life as inefficient and emotional was now beginning to understand the complexities of it all, the beautiful contradictions that made humanity unique. "I still don't fully understand it," Lizara continued, "but I think I'm beginning to appreciate it. You don't shy away from your flaws. You embrace them, learn from them, and that's what makes you strong." Nathan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. "You've got it. That's what makes us human. We don't pretend to be perfect, but we keep going. Together." For a moment, Lizara was silent, her gaze distant as she processed everything she had seen and learned during her time on Earth. Nathan wasn't sure what was going on in her mind, but he could tell that the princess had changed. The walls she had built around herself were slowly crumbling, and the weight of what she had witnessed was sinking in. "I've seen strength in your people," she said, her voice softer now. "In their kindness, their willingness to help each other, even when it's difficult. I've seen it in their ability to heal, to rebuild after tragedy." Nathan nodded. "That's what we do. We fall, but we get back up. We make mistakes, but we learn from them. And we don't do it alone." Lizara turned to face him, her violet eyes meeting his with a level of intensity Nathan hadn't seen before. "I still have much to learn," she said quietly. "But I'm starting to think that maybe your species has something that we on Centralis have missed." "What do you mean?" Nathan asked, genuinely curious. Lizara hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "On Centralis, we value efficiency, logic, and perfection. We avoid emotions, believing them to be weaknesses. But here, on Earth, I see that your emotions are not weaknesses. They are your strength. They connect you to each other, to life, in ways that make you more than just a species of survival." Nathan's heart swelled with emotion. For the first time, he felt that Lizara truly understood the essence of what it meant to be human. It wasn't just about technology or strength. It was about the relationships, the bonds, and the willingness to love and support one another, no matter the cost. "I think you're right," Nathan said, his voice filled with sincerity. "It's our connections that make us strong, not just the ones we form with other people, but with the world around us. The good, the bad, the pain, it all becomes part of who we are." Lizara's gaze softened. "It is beautiful in its own way." And perhaps I was too quick to judge. Nathan smiled warmly. It's okay. Sometimes it takes seeing something firsthand to understand it. I'm glad you're starting to see the bigger picture. As they sat in silence, the stars twinkling above them, Lizera looked up at the sky, her expression thoughtful. I will return to Zentralis with much to think about. Your species is not what I expected, but I believe there is much we could learn from you. Nathan's heart skipped a beat. And what will you tell your people about us? Lizera paused, a faint smile playing at the corner of her lips. I will tell them that humans are more than just a species of chaos and emotion. I will tell them that you are strong, not because you are perfect, but because you embrace your flaws and keep going. Nathan felt a lump in his throat as he looked at Lizera. In that moment, he realized how far they had come, not just in their understanding of each other, but in their mutual respect. Thank you, Lizera, Nathan said quietly. I'm glad you came to Earth. I think we both learned something important. Lizera met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the stars above them. Perhaps I will visit again. There is much more to learn here. Nathan nodded. You're always welcome. As Lizera turned to walk toward the air car that would take her back to her ship, Nathan felt a sense of hope. He had known from the beginning that Earth was a place worth defending, but now he saw it through the eyes of an outsider, a princess from another world who had learned that humanity's greatest strength lay not in technology, but in the heart. And as Lizera disappeared into the night, Nathan couldn't help but feel proud of the species he called home.